All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the September 2022 Complexity Weekend. We're going to have the opening live stream with the organizer introduction and some interactive Jamboard times coming up in about 18 minutes. So there'll be 18 minutes of music by Michael Garfield, Future Fossils, and then we'll head into the organizer introduction and interactive Jamboard session. So please enjoy the tunes and talk to you quite soon. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, Sean, Shirley, Michaela, Carolina. Hello, everyone on Livestream. Welcome to the Complexity Weekend, September 2022 kickoff. Would anyone like to say hello before we launch into some organizer introduction and then an interactive Jamboard session?
Just so happy to be here with everyone. It's going to be a fun weekend.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Awesome.
Me too. Let's go.
Let's do it. We'll raise our hand and gather if we want to add anything, and maybe one of us here can help those who are in gather find their way to the live stream. So on we go. We are in the Jamboard. Sean, if you could share the Jamboard in the YouTube live chat. And everything that we're going to be doing and using is the same tools that we're using in the cohort itself. So we're going to be using this Jamboard for all the live streams. All of us right now are currently in Gather, where all of the interactive sessions will be, and we'll be using all the tools together. It's just going to be a great time. So let's just first get that tool question out of the way, and then we'll be on to talking a little bit more about Complexity Weekend. We're using this tool, Jamboard, as our slides and making them interactive. So on Jamboard, on the left side of your screen, you'll see a few options and ways to interact. You can draw, you can add post-it notes, you can add shapes, you can also add in images. And then the way that you move amongst the different slides is at the very top bar, you can drop down and move. So that's a little tooling precursor, but this weekend is about learning and applying complexity together. So let us advance to the third slide. We're going to provide a lot of context up front, and that will open the space for some discussion around everything from Complexity Weekend's history and trajectory and values, and get towards all the ways that we can participate, because these live streams are like the tip of the iceberg. They're rewatchable, so they increase the accessibility for our global cohort, many of whom might be asleep right now or at work. And then it helps us set a shared frame so that when we interact synchronously, we can have meaningful encounters. We're going to have a first hour or so of this opening ceremony talking about Complexity Weekend, as well as the purpose, values, and guidelines. We'll give some role-based acknowledgements, and we'll recognize a lot of the people and organizations that helped make this weekend cohort happen. And then we'll be hanging out with all these awesome facilitators on the stream and just taking things wherever the complexity guides us towards. So let's start with some history and initial conditions of Complexity Weekend. And Sean, could you just mention this while I make it larger on the live stream? Thank you.
Sure, yeah. So basically, Complexity Weekend started in May 2019 as an actual in-person event in downtown San Francisco. And this was before COVID and all that kind of disrupted the way events work across the world. And when that actually occurred, we made the decision to go online and basically never looked back at that point. We, as we'll see when we talk about values a little later in this live stream, that really opened it up to having global participation every 6 months, basically, and really getting the type of diversity that's required to really see how complexity is embodied in different systems from very different angles and perspectives on diverse teams. It's all exciting stuff we'll talk about, but basically it's been a growth since then of kind of maturing into this all online format. You know, we'll talk about the tooling in terms of the gather space for our cohort, you know, how we're using Jamboard to create kind of this bottoms up, tops down interactive way to kind of have the cohort talk to each other kind of during the live stream. It's all exciting stuff, but we're kind of at this point now. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like sixth weekend. I actually never wrote the number down or thought of the number, but that's kind of awesome. But yeah, so we've been doing it for a while, but also everything keeps changing. So, you know, one of the values we'll talk about is Complexity Weekend itself being a complex system. And so the organizers, the facilitators, everyone who engages to make this event happen we're learning constantly and we're adapting and evolving. But yeah, I think that's a pretty good ease the way in.
Thank you. So that's our temporal structure, having a weekend cohort every 6 months for the last several years after one in-person event. Another way to look at the Complexity Weekend community is in terms of the roles that we play. Amidst those events, the main weekends, there are also smaller heartbeats in the months between. Again, we'll talk more about them later. For all events, heartbeat or weekend, we have co-organizers and facilitators who are just participants in the community. That's the biggest circle, who step up and want to help out in that way. The two ways that people do join the community are through those smaller informal monthly heartbeats, as well as jumping in fully right into a weekend cohort. We have associates and supporters who provide financial and non-financial support for the community. And then speckled all around are teams. We're going to talk more about teams in the middle live stream and then feature them in the closing live stream. Teams are forming outside on the interface and inside of Complexity Weekend. And also there are committees, which are Complexity Weekend teams, which we'll come to soon. Another way that, and if anyone here wants to be adding any comment, just raise your hand in here. Another way to look at how Complexity Weekend proceeds is in terms of that rhythm that we're mentioning. And then every 6 months, there's an energy peak with people coming together for a weekend cohort and smaller heartbeat energy peaks in between. And then in the background is you and your team. And another way to see that is in terms of your personal and team journeys. Your complexity journey with all of its nonlinear aspects happening in the background. And whenever you check in or out of events, that's totally fine. And so over multiple timescales, there's Complexity Weekend holding a rhythm and a space to connect and share your work and get new insights. Sean?
Yeah, this is kind of getting to the meat of the work of everyone who kind of steps up to make Complexity Weekend happen. Is, the goal is to basically create this community backdrop through Deep Time that's kind of always here. We have a weekend 2 times a year, basically every 6 months. We have monthly heartbeats on the months when a weekend isn't occurring. It's just like a community infrastructure that then individuals and teams can enter that energy when they'd like to engage with the overall Complexity Weekend community, and then go and do their own things as they wish, and it's just kind of always going to be there, hopefully. And it's a scaffolding for these types of complexity journeys. And we'll talk a lot more about journeys in the context of like a rebranding that's kind of underway for Complexity Weekend at Michaela's live session, which she'll talk about at some point soon.
Thank you. So that is a little bit of the macro on CW. Now let's talk about this weekend specifically. First, we're going to provide an overview of the weekend flow, and then we'll jump into the single source of truth that will contain all the details. So there's 3 days to the weekend. It's an absolutely global experience. So we represent all the dates and times in UTC. So that may mean that the exact dates and times are different for you, and that's all good. But as organizers, every date and time we present is going to be in UTC. Right now, we're having the welcome live stream. So welcome. We're going over the weekend overview at this recursive moment and having an interactive Jamboard experience. Immediately after this live stream ends, we're going to head over to our cohort gather space, and that's where 100% of the interactive sessions are. During the weekend, there's so many ways to participate and get involved, which we'll look at in a second with the single source of truth. But really, you're checking in and out as healthy and balanced for you with your sleep and family and life balance. And there is roughly alternation between facilitated sessions and flexible time where a session can kind of continue on, or facilitators might be around to talk to you about team formation or just the joy of connecting with other participants who love complexity. In the middle, there's also going to be a midpoint 1 hour live stream that'll happen right before a Teams fair. And that Teams fair is going to be all about helping people get onto Teams if they're interested to do so, form or join teams, and then get those teams off in a good direction. We have a weekend format, but it's not a hackathon. There's no competition. There's no measure or rubric. This is about connecting and setting a direction and a course for the continuation of that complexity journey. And then as we head into the last third of the weekend, there will continue to be alternating sessions and flexible time. So a lot more skills and perspectives you can gain from the sessions, and also flexible time to connect with your team. And we'll talk about team seeds. At the closing live stream, that will be an opportunity for teams who want to present a pre-recorded video, which in my session we'll be talking about how to pre-record videos, or live appearance. And that's to give teams some visibility and just recognize their amazing work. And there's going to be so many fascinating directions. And again, the teams are presenting just to highlight how they've connected and what vision they've seen. And it's the work and the rhythm of the actual collaboration that follows the weekend. Anything else to add on the weekend, or shall we talk about the program and the single source of truth?
If Shirley or Michaela want to speak just about their experiences, having participated and facilitated and organized past weekends, anything to add there? Speak up if you'd like. Otherwise, hello, Shirley.
What can I say? Well, yeah, I've had many different roles and continue to participate actually on a team that we formed last November on homelessness and agent-based modeling. And that's had its ups and downs. And so that's a great kind of experiment also in complexity, is how to work in teams. And so I really appreciate having the opportunity to learn more, really about complexity at all levels, because it's just part of life. But I think the difference for me is, being in this community, and then also like those edge spaces where I'll meet people in this community and then interact with them somewhere else, just kind of going out like that into a network. All really great opportunities to expand kind of my knowledge, but also to hear, obviously, other perspectives and to really learn from others. So I really appreciated this journey in so many ways.
Thank you, Shirley. Michaela, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, thanks, Shirley. I absolutely agree that this community is very, very nice to come back to in different roles, depending on our energy level and bandwidth at different times. What I wanted to stress as well is the intercultural and interdisciplinary aspect of being able to talk about complexity with people from all over and different walks of life, and more or less applied and more or less theoretical, which is always very interesting. It's like another facilitator said last time, it's like taking your brain to the gym. And I think we should do that a little bit more often.
Awesome. And it's kind of like this multiple temporal scales. There's the weekend itself and what we can do during the weekend, and there's our longer journey. Let's look at how we'll be participating quite specifically by heading over to the participant single source of truth document. So I will shift over to that tab. This is CODA, and if you have registered, you'll have access to this document. And anyone who doesn't have access, please let us know. You'll gain access. On the top page, here on the left. Also on you may see a light version of Coda. You can shift between the dark and the light if you want on the top right. This top page gives some information on how you can participate. And at this point, as it is the weekend, feel free to explore all the pages, but the one that we want to highlight is the weekend program. So here's the weekend program. There's also links to get these events added to your own calendar because the listed date and time are in UTC. And then the Your Time link will open up a link that says exactly what time it is in your time zone. This table is going to be always the updated reference point for what is happening during the weekend. So we're right here. It's 18 UTC. We're in the YouTube opening live stream. We're giving a welcome to Complexity weekend. And then we're going to be heading into Gather, getting familiar, having half an hour just to hang out. And then we're into a rhythm of facilitated sessions and flexible time. So you'll always see the location for events and the event title and the description. The gray squares are for facilitated sessions, and the facilitator's name is provided here. And then the unshaded squares are just flexible times and times to meet with other participants in the community. So at this point, the weekend program is going to be like the one reference point. Every single synchronous event is in the cohort's gather space. And the only time that that's not the case is for the opening, middle, and closing live streams. Everything else is in the single URL. So that is the single source of truth. And the other pages, you'll see other things that you can do in the single source of truth. Do you want to add any other information, Sean?
I actually was seeing if Carolina wants to add anything, just given that Carolina and you, Daniel, had worked on this, bringing the program into Coda for the first time. Anything, I guess, Carolina, to highlight about the thoughts there or why it's structured the way it is?
Let's see, to be honest, I'm a huge fan of Coda and the way that you can sort of whip up a website on a document. I think it's a really good example for complexity. To manage complexity, you can just put everything on here and connect it with the forms. It's very, very neat. Yeah, so just adding, just everything is in here. I would bookmark this and refer to it at any time because this is always, obviously you're not expected to be here the whole time. This is going to be more than 48 hours of event. But this is where you can choose. You can read a bit about each session and just find out what you want to join and choose your own adventure a little bit.
Thanks, Carolina. Yes, as the timing shows, it is more than 48 hours to accommodate our global cohort and all availabilities. It would be quite a feat, and one I'd hope with its own reward to do 48 hours. I don't think it's ever been done. Not that it can't be done. But it really is continuous so that you can join when it's healthy and balanced for you. And it is what we make of it. This is not a podcast. This is like our real interactive lives. So show up when it's healthy and balanced and when you can show up. And we're going to lead with kindness, and we'll understand every joining and leaving and lag and video on, video off. It's a space where when you come, you're joining other people who are there then, which sounds simple, but that is where complexity begins in many ways. So that's some details from the organizers, some context on CW overall, and a little bit about how we use the single source of truth. Also on the top page of the single source of truth, you can use Control plus or minus or scroll to make the font different sizes. You can contact us via email, complexityweekend@gmail.com, or there's an anonymous kind of micro feedback form, but we're there to enable your participation. So if there's something that is not working on your setup or you don't have access to something, just let us know. It's what we're actually there to do. So onwards. Let's go to mission, values, and guidelines. So Sean first, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I like this little visual that Dan's going to blow up right now. This is, if you've read about complex systems or complex adaptive systems much, it might be a familiar diagram, but it's a fun way in which feedback is kind of embodied in these complex systems, where you'll have some sort of behavior of the system as a whole, right? And that'll actually give some feedback down into the agents of the system itself. And then through the interactions of those agents at the micro level, you'll actually get some emergent effect or something that then ends up affecting the whole system behavior again, whether that's the GDP of an economic system or the culture of an organization. So you've got this kind of tops down and bottoms up kind of combined feedback mechanism. And that's something I want to really kind of bring to our forefront of our minds right now, because again, Complexity Weekend is a complex system, and everything we're about to describe relating to the mission of this community practice, the values we have, the way we embody the values as participants with the participant guidelines. Those are ways in which our interactions with other people during the weekend can create this amazing culture and this sense of cohort between everyone here. But learning from everything we've done in the past in terms, these values came from previous cohorts working together to decide what do we value, how do we embody those values. We're broadcasting that now kind of from the top down, just so that each agent is informed and is aware of the power of their interactions in affecting this whole system. So I just want to kind of start with that. And then maybe, Carolina, do you want to start with this slide?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So starting a little bit about thinking about what is bringing us all together. Obviously, all of the organizers, facilitators, participants, we all have some shared purpose and we're all interested in some form of complexity science, engaging with complexity in the real world, in the academic world. There's all sorts of backgrounds. There's, as Shirley mentioned before, complexity is all over life. So I guess this is what brings us together. And there's also the desire to have an impact and co-create with our teams, and then keep improving our community of practice through feedback, through our all modes of participation, and through peer-to-peer mentorship. And finally, we consider that we all have in common our core values that we'll also go into in a little bit, and the desire to develop a community where all that have shared these values and interests feel welcome and feel that they can participate and learn and contribute from equal standing. And we can go also then for the collective mission. So yes, this has also been mentioned already. We learn complexity science by doing, and as you'll have the opportunity to see in the sessions throughout the weekend, they tend to be very interactive, so you can engage with the session itself. There's all sorts of ways to engage with complexity, as you can see in the program. And the space is open all the time throughout the event from beginning to end, and you are more than welcome and encouraged to engage with other participants. So you can not only learn complexity by participating in the sessions, but also by engaging with other participants. Who knows what you might learn just through random conversations with people that aren't supposed to be the facilitators. That is veritable peer-to-peer learning. Then we also serve through deep time. So we consider that Complexity Weekend, that the participation can happen through a longer time. There's different ways to engage. You don't only have this weekend, but if you want to stay involved, there are heartbeats. You can form teams, and any type of feedback that we provide, we try to include it also through deep time and take it forward. Keep it in mind when thinking about our following events and opportunities for people to participate. And finally, if we hope to have an impact, we hope to innovate, and we can only do this through inclusion. So allowing everyone from all kinds of backgrounds, whether they be around your academic backgrounds, your social backgrounds, your geographic backgrounds, wherever you're coming from. Complexity Weekend is global and interdisciplinary, and we want to include everyone's perspectives in order to really achieve some innovation around complexity. And I see, yeah, Sean also wants to add something in here.
I think Carolina's awesome coverage of all that. I was just curious if Michaela or Shirley want to chime in on maybe the next two slides, just to kind of mix in different perspectives on the values. What do you guys think?
This is just to surface the tip of the iceberg, and we'll post the link to where people can see the full document. So yes, it'd be great for someone just to go through some core values.
Sure. Are we on this current slide?
Yeah.
Core
Yeah,
values? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley.
Just trying to get in sync. I'm sorry. So where did Carolina leave off?
Just the core values, if you want to cover some.
Yeah,
of those
you can just pick up here.
Mm-hmm.
Pick a pair. Okay. Well, I like so the value of active education that we are learning by doing is so important, I think, because I don't think I've ever I haven't learned much or actually retained it, I suppose, without actually doing or engaging with the subject. And I think it's great that we have a community to engage with. It's just not facts that we're toying with, or, you know, it's ideas, of course, and people, most importantly, people. And then that is related, I think, to teamwork, making the dream work. So it is another form of active learning, to be engaging with other people, because we're not pretty much going to get very far if we're in a silo, right? By ourselves, reading books or whatever we're doing. That it's really, there's a lot of value in the teamwork, excuse me. And then I'll just add on that participation does mean accessibility and inclusion. So I think that's really important, because in fact, our diversity of, you know, different interests and different ways of thinking and communicating, it's so important. And so we lose that if we are not an accessible and inclusive community. And also understanding the challenges that we have, since each of us inhabits our own, you know, mind and body. And sometimes it's challenging to understand accessibility and inclusion. So we respect and want to learn from each other in that sense.
Thank you, Shirley. Michaela?
Yeah, I would just like to add that just go for it. Step up and be brave. Crush that conversation you're hearing. Ask questions. If anybody, as a facilitator, needs you to interact or to play a game or whatever, just do it. It's lots of fun, and nobody's here to judge you. You're a participant, and everybody here is a participant. So let's learn by doing.
Oh yeah, we have fun. Forgot about that. And it just makes me reflect on how elsewhere in the static artifact world, recordings, lectures, texts, you might see a lot of debate about what a complex system is, and there's a distance between what is being discussed, even when it's a critical system, and how it's being discussed. And some of those walls dissolve when we come into conversation together, and it's no longer like, well, the double pendulum's complex because of unpredictable outcomes, but the single pendulum is simple. We might have a conversation with somebody in logistics, and they might be aware of the complexity of even bringing that single pendulum to the table. So it's like there's always ways with different perspectives to open up a situation with complexity, and that can be said pretty easily, but it's quite a different thing to really integrate that into how we work and relate and organize. So last one here, Sean, maybe go for it. Participation guidelines.
Yeah, so we've been talking about a lot of the values of kind of the top level stuff from that diagram earlier. Now let's really get into the micro as an agent in this system. How can our interactions help create a positive culture? And and a really great sense of community amongst our cohort. So these are ideas like what we like to say, adopting a complexity thinking mindset, right? So that might mean, embracing the beginner's mindset, understanding that to truly know complexity from all angles is to, I don't know, live 50 lifetimes or 100, how many lifetimes that takes to happen. We're all limited in that knowledge. So just being open to kind of new ideas and things to surprise you, and being willing to kind of pursue the truth wherever it takes you. And even if it's crossing multiple interdisciplinary boundaries, and, not being afraid of that, being closed off to where your exploration might take you. And then ideas like, and this is something we'll stress a lot with the team creation and success of teams, is really communication. And that's within a team setting, that's between participants, that's between facilitator and participant. Like, it's just so key to understand our cohort as a network of humans, and as communication as really the edge building infrastructure, or one of them, for our sense of community. So really thinking about how you communicate, the best way to optimize it, how to, be comfortable with a little bit of uncomfortableness, right, of communication. Some people are going to come from different barriers to communication. They have different technological barriers. Maybe people's internet might be going out, and you just kind of have to be patient through that if you want to get to the other side of it, which is really hearing perspectives you're not used to hearing, or being surprised by the backgrounds and the perspectives that people are showing up with. Embracing technology. A lot of people, especially if it's your first time at Complexity Weekend, it's probably overwhelming, right? It's like a lot of different tools you probably never used before, but they were all very thoughtfully chosen by organizers and glued together in a way that is meant to optimize the use of that technology for the learning of complexity by doing. And there's ways to kind of honor that by making sure at any moment, your audio and visual setup and etiquette is good, like mute when you're not talking, just in case there's background noise. It doesn't kind of enter everyone's audio for the live session. Just little things like that really help. And as we'll see in future iterations of Complexity Weekend, we're actually working behind the scenes to pull a lot of the technology and different platforms into one unified solution, just to make it a lot easier for everyone to get a hold of it or onboard onto it if it's your first time. And then full participation, I think reaching out on the edges. I think maybe somebody wants to step up and discuss either of those bullets.
I'll give, I think, an anecdote that connects a lot of them. There was a one-on-one session where participants are connecting one-on-one and having unstructured conversations, and someone was unable to have a microphone, and also their video was off, and we were able to communicate through chat. And so we were communicating. It was really stretching what both of us were used to in terms of how do we communicate with these platforms. The limit of technology, which we couldn't just bang our fists against. We had to work with what we had, and that was able to engage someone's participation and acknowledge that if you're on mobile or if you have low internet bandwidth, these are all the reality that is our starting point with complexity, rather than elsewhere where complexity might be like the end of the road or a synonym for like intractable or insoluble. But in the complexity space that we build and co-create at Complexity Weekend, it's just the beginning. So hopefully when little glitches and lags happen over the weekend, that people can take it in stride and see past the screen, but also, use the technology that we have, which is quite amazing to connect globally like this. Even a few years ago, this was not something that would have been plausible. So recognize the uniqueness, and also in the context of our ecological situations, really reflect on how we can bring together a lot of discussions that we're going to be having about the psychological to the ecological sustainability. These are all things that can happen. And so trying to balance all of these angles and staying chill while we do it, we hope. Any more comments, or we can move on? All right. Here we have a very unique contribution from Carolina. So please describe what we're seeing here, and I'll move over to the Maptio.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so what we're seeing here is we wanted to try and see what kind of a little bit of the network that Complexity Weekend is connected to, because everyone is coming from different places, backgrounds, communities. So we kind of asked our participants and facilitators to give us a little bit of information on the affiliations and other communities that they are active in. And to me, the most interesting thing is that this is kind of the Complexity Weekend universe. These are all our participants are part of these other organizations, and this represents 147 organizations. And keep in mind that this is just with around 40% of participants providing information around what other communities they're connected to or what other initiatives. So you can just imagine the wealth of perspectives that we have here. And essentially the way that this works is that you can see the bubbles. The bigger the bubble, the more organizations you have. And if you zoom in, maybe you can use the regeneration environment bubble, Daniel, if that's okay. You can see the names that people gave us, and essentially the bigger the bubble, the more participants we have. So I'd say that one of the most well-represented communities that we find here is the Global Regeneration Collab, that also brings together folks from different backgrounds working around paradigm of regeneration. And second best represented other community relates to Web3. So we've got Kernel also very well represented. And following that, we've got Common Stack and Token Engineering Academy. So there's a lot of interest also in Web3. We've got quite a few people interested in that. We've got a few DAOs represented, some of them by more than one person. And one thing that I think is also interesting is that as you will be able to see, literally the biggest one says miscellaneous. So this was the bubble that it has. All of these things are somewhat different. We've got 3 effective altruists. We've got peace movements. We've got social change. We've got employment agencies, media. We've got alumni associations. We've got companies. We've got systems thinking. So this really illustrates how varied the variety of perspectives that we have at Complexity Weekend. Yeah, and we've got also quite a few folks from universities that also represented universities and research institutes. And finally, I will admit that I was lazy to look up the acronyms. So you've got one if you want to look into what that is. Everyone that just submitted a few letters together, you got into this group. So this came from, and one thing, like I kind of play with this tool that is called Maptio, and we're not fully exploring it because here I use the unit to basically make the bubbles bigger, saying how many people you have, but you can actually associate individuals with these and then see connections between them. If you see the same individual between 2 different groups, for example, you will be able to see this as a line in the map. And this is something that we are hopefully going to work on. We weren't able to do something like this for this cohort because we're still unsure. We don't have a very well-defined data policy. Didn't want to step on anyone's toes accidentally. But we will be working on it and hopefully have some other interesting network mapping experiences that might inform network weaving in future events for Complexity Weekend. And by the way, the link is there so you can play with it if you like.
Thanks, Carolina. I think it brings together so many learnings about complexity. There's a tool and mapping, which is used in a lot of complex systems approaches for multi-scale mapping and sense making and potentially really open areas. And the mapping is both a powerful tool for somebody who might want to use it, as well as an accessible tool. And that's kind of what complexity threads the needle with, both accessibility and performance. And then it reflects our ecosystem And that brings in all these ideas and discussions around ecosystems and organizations and interorganizational relationships. And then it was through that process and discussing how data and information ought to be used that, of course, how could we use data without the complexity of the discussion around what is ethical and what is consensual with data use. And so how can we deal with that? Is that going to be the end point for the discussion? It's like, no, it's the beginning of our discussion, and we can hold that space in a team or in a committee at CW so that over the months that realistically it takes to develop slowly and in a participatory way this kind of a data use policy, then iteration after iteration of CW will just have more and more amazing and interesting networks to weave. So thanks for bringing this tool and analysis.
Yeah, just want to say this one cool thing, which I think is you can look at it and think anyone participating, you are literally one random conversation away from any of these organizations. So you are one participant away from 147 communities just by being here.
Yep. So that one spotlight talk or sharing your team on the live stream is like percolating around the world in a very unique way. So only enabled by us showing up and making this happen. So onwards. Okay, so as mentioned just a minute ago, we didn't have a lot of individual level data for this cohort, and also where we did have it, we wanted to balance how it was used. So this is some information from an April cohort. So maybe like Sean, do you want to describe anything here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of the cohorts are very different from each other, but also similar to each other. So while we are looking at data from April's cohort, it's pretty similar to what we've got here. And so, for our cohort, I know we've got about 130 registered participants and maybe 30 or so facilitators. And they are truly around the globe. So there will be people at all times in Gather because they might be waking up at a time when it's 3 a.m. for you. So it's going to be really interesting. I remember one of our cohorts, we had maybe like 55 countries represented. So it is remarkable kind of the conversations you'll get in and where people are actually at when you inquire. And then this figure here, actually, Danny, why don't you share that figure because you created that one?
Sure. So this is a scatter plot, and the x-axis is self-assessed. What is your familiarity with learning complexity? There's no rubric, there's no grades here, but we just wanted people to give an estimate, like, are you a little bit familiar or have you been hearing about it for a long time? And on the y-axis is the level of familiarity with applying complexity, which often comes as a novelty to people even who are very deeply engaged with complex systems like logistics or healthcare, social work, again, any of these areas, because although those areas are often framed as complex systems by research communities, it isn't seen as an application of complexity to work with these essential systems. And so in service of learning and applying complexity together, it's always so fascinating to understand that, just like Carolina said, in that conversation could be connecting anywhere in the world. That conversation may be anywhere in the space of a lot of familiarity with learning and or applying or not. And that is what connects us back to our participation guidelines and our values. Like, not everyone may be speaking your language as a first language, or jargon or acronyms may be unfamiliar. There might be a term that is something you use every day that is totally new to somebody else, and vice versa. And how to navigate that kind of a co-informing without resorting to extended lecture type ranting. It's a fine balance to strike, but that is what we see happen in spaces where people feel encouraged to have beginner's mind and ask questions and be really open. So that's, again, we don't have the quantitative data shown here, but this is from April. And suffice to say that there will be people here who are very familiar with learning and or applying or not. Let's just look at one of these word clouds. How about this one?
Yeah, sure. So, this is a response to everyone in the April cohort around picking 5 words in any language that express or describe what complexity kind of means for you. And actually, if you can zoom in maybe a little more, Dan, maybe even pinch zoom if you can. Like, what's really fun about these word cloud diagrams is not only what a lot of people had as common, emergence, you see like systems, nonlinearity, networks, a lot of concepts, you'll get more familiar with as you keep reading about or learning about complex systems. But what's really fun is all the tiny words, right? We're all kind of on this distribution that has a really fat tail, and that fat tail is where all the interesting stuff is, right? You have somebody coming in talking about graining. I've never even heard of that one, so I'll have to find them. Cahooligan. I don't know what that word is, but I like someone wrote cool. I agree with that one for sure. Ice steer. I don't know what that is. Niches I've heard about a little bit. Yeah, welcoming. It's interesting to think about welcoming as a form of complexity. That's we have actually an onboarding committee that kind of thinks in that way. What's the best way to make someone feel welcome to the community and like they understand, their environment and can start participating fully. Multi-scale. There's all these just really amazing concepts, but really, if we can connect any of the 2 small words together, that's where perhaps the most innovation will occur, right? And actually that kind of gets into ecotones and all that type of stuff that Michaela and your co-facilitator will be talking about in your live session. So that metaphor in a more natural system setting. But yeah, I think it's just fun, and you can go on Jamboard and look at the other ones. You can just zoom them up, or just zoom your screen if you don't want to manipulate the slides on the Jamboard. But it's a lot of fun to kind of look and see what makes up a Complexity Weekend cohort. And I guess one last thing I'll say is that one thing we're striving toward, and we're getting, I think, closer to almost every cohort, is having a distribution that's as flat as possible across as many properties as possible. So time zone, not having a big concentration of everyone, roughly being from one time zone, and then we got some sprinkling of global participation. No, like having it be as much equal representation as possible across the possible time zones, or disciplines, having a flat distribution, or flat distribution across who's from academia or industry, or some categories of types of backgrounds. We're always striving to have the flattest, because that is aligned with our core value of maximum diversity and maximum innovation in that way. Any other thoughts, anyone, before we move on to the next Jamboard slide?
Let's continue. Emergence. The emergent elephant in the room. Okay, so let's provide some role-based acknowledgements. Well, first, the co-organizers for this cohort were Carolina and myself. So thanks a lot, Carolina, for being a stalwart and amazing co-organizer. We had fun. We chilled. We landed the plane while others it was only taking off for. And everyone's welcome to co-organize. We work together on a weekly rhythm in the months leading up to the weekend, for about the 4 months or so leading up to the weekend. So everyone is welcome to be a co-organizer. It is not going to put any stress that you don't desire on you. You don't have to be on a live stream. You don't have to do any specific skill. It's about doing what you can and what you want to make participant experience the best that it can be for diverse participants. So anyone who enjoys thinking about those kinds of things, then it'd be great to have you co-organize like a heartbeat or a weekend coming up. Organizers are spreadsheet / CODA curators and respecters. We coordinate the facilitators, and we have a really amazing set of facilitators for this cohort. Everyone here on this stream is a facilitator. Facilitators are participants too, and facilitators go beyond to commit to 1 or more times, 11 times if you're Michaela. And in those sessions, they do something. They facilitate. They don't lecture. They don't address. They facilitate your participation, and they show up for each other's sessions as participants. So they come from many backgrounds and many different angles that they've taken on their life journey. Not everyone may have even put complexity as like a label of their work or approach before facilitating at CW, which is always amazing because we're learning from different ways of working and relating together. In the program, you'll see more information on the sessions and the descriptions. So big thanks to all of our facilitators who stepped up for this cohort, and anyone is welcome to facilitate at an event coming up as well. All right. Next, yes, Sean, go for it.
Oh, no, actually, expand that slide. I can go ahead and talk about the committees.
Please.
And we'll just talk quickly about it because we want to move on to the interactive Jamboard portion of the live stream. But one unique thing about Complexity Weekend as a community of practice is that we actually have internal teams to Complexity Weekend that are public and open to any participant to join. And they're focused around different missions. And it's kind of like a pre-existing team that you can just join into if you'd like to start learning complexity by doing in a diverse team setting. You don't have to worry about starting a new team or what it's, how to balance working on this team or this new startup or something like that. With my day job, it's just an ongoing team that you can drop into at any point, see what's going on, see how people are working, contribute if you'd like to. And so some of these committees that were activated for this particular weekend and may actually be present during the weekend are things like our tech committee, which is really focused around the tech stack, Coda, Gather, Keybase, various things you'll hear about over the weekend. It's all been developed in conjunction with this committee, and they're actually focused right now on what's the next iteration of our tech stack and how can we kind of integrate them all into one unified experience on complexityweekend.com. And so I really want to shout out one of our supporters, Manifall, which is a firm we're working with to build out a lot of the technology under the hood of Complexity Weekend, who have been leading this particular committee. And so if you're interested in that, just email complexityweekend@gmail.com. We'll plug you into when their weekly meetings are and when you can drop in or help out. Quickly, placemaking is actually one that Shirley and I basically started a while ago. And this is one around how to develop a sense of place online for complexity, using the tools, using especially Gather and actually building the Gather spaces and the cohort space that we're in now. That's all done in this committee. It's hibernating right now. We're not meeting regularly. We've kind of got our initial design in place, but we would like to spin up soon on some subcommittees that really focus on innovation in the placemaking space. So just coming up with a bunch of designs, and then another subcommittee that's really focused on each event and pressing whatever innovations at the time into a final product at a recurring schedule. And then teams is one. Maybe Daniel, you want to talk about that one?
Yes. It's been a great time with Jessica and many others in Teams, and that's about creating the Teams process, which we'll talk more about in the middle live stream. We also have Legal with Shirley and others, where we're exploring what kinds of formal structures will be best for CW going forward, and Outreach with Michaela leading the way and bringing so much expertise in communications and outreach. And that work is also just beginning and should have some quite exciting directions to participate in during the weekend. To bring a few more roles into acknowledgement, we want to acknowledge our associates, Innovators Box, who is represented by Monica Kang. Every associate brings something special and beyond financial to the table. Monica stewarded trainings for facilitators and helps us with rethinking online events, one could say. Block Science, with some facilitators and participants involved, brings a lot of expertise in systems modeling and CAD for those who are interested. And Research Mentors, bringing a perspective on mentorship and facilitation as well. We want to acknowledge our supporters, Manifall, A Tech Development, firm and eclosions. Michaela? Anything you want to add, Michaela?
I think it's just fascinating to be able to, combine your everyday work, your special interests, my passion for bridging communities into one by having multiple hats and being able to wear the one you feel most comfortable with. So thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. And Sean, you could put this in the live chat. We are overwhelmingly volunteer community of practice, and we want to understand and have paths towards financial sustainability while also holding as a value that there will never be a financial barrier to participating. So for those of you who want to help directly or indirectly in that mission, your support financially or your insights into how we can find sustainability are really essential at this point. So head over to that link that Sean has posted if you want to support through PayPal, or any other way is great. Just contact us. We're going to, in this last little bit before the interactive session, just point to the tools that we'll use. So just like complexity, the best way is truly just to join, and you'll understand a lot by just getting into these platforms and playing around. But it helps sometimes to know a little bit about what it's going to be like. So this is Gather. Gather's the synchronous video chat platform. On the bottom left, you can modify your avatar, set a status, and turn your audio and visual on or off, share your screen, and also raise your hand. On the bottom right, you can click on the people icon. That'll show you who's in the space. And by right-clicking on somebody, you can follow them and just zoom over to wherever they are. It's a spatial chat platform, so it matters where you are in the space. You'll also see a chat tab on the bottom right, and there you can send messages to the room, so everybody in the area nearby, just people who you can hear, or just one-on-one messages. And then on the top right, when you're talking to somebody, you'll see some little arrows that you can use to expand or shrink someone's image. And you can also click on somebody's image to make them large or screen share. The space for September looks this way. So Sean and Shirley and Placemaking, thanks for this amazing space. When you spawn, you're going to be right in the bottom of the center area. The green path straight up is going to take you first to the cafe. That's just a chill spot. If you ever want to meet somebody, or in flexible times you just want to come hang out, that's the place to go. There's going to be people there like all the time. Above is where the facilitated sessions will be. So they usually start on the bottom left on the large discussion space. So if you're in this main space, that is where to go to during the live session. If you're a facilitator, that's where we'll expect you to be at the start of the session. And people will be accumulating right here. Again, just use the arrow keys to walk around or run over to somebody who you want to talk to. The orange path takes you to the garden, which is just a very chill spot. I'm sure Shirley has populated it with different critters and plants, flora and fauna. And the red path to the right takes one to a co-working space and a recording studio area, which is actually where we are right now. So that's useful for co-working, kind of getting out of the main center area. And also, if you want to record with me or by yourself, or if you want to join a live stream, that's where that will be. The other tool, other than the synchronous video chat, is Coda, which is for the single source of truth and the weekend program. And here, again, if you have any questions, please email us. But the main things that you'll want to know are this side bar can be hidden or shown. And the weekend program is really where you'll want to be, because even though they're all the same link, this is still a very useful page for finding what is happening when. And then especially towards the middle, we'll be taking a look at team seeds forming, and this is going to be just an amazing table with a lot of opportunities for getting more involved. Keybase is a messaging platform. It's totally optional for this cohort, but many people do use Keybase in the community. And so if you would like, what you'll notice is in the People tab of the Single Source of Truth, you'll see all of our participants. Everybody is identified with their Complexity Weekend username, and there's also an open field that you can edit preferred contact, as well as what is complexity to you. So if you want to be contactable, then it's great to just add however you want to be contacted here. And for those who provided it, their Keybase username is also already here. So those are the tooling. Onwards. Great timing. Top of the hour.
Perfect.
We're going to be heading into really the rest of the weekend being some of the most interactive times that have happened for us, certainly, and hopefully for you. And Monica Kang has provided these helpful reminders. This is kind of like us dropping in to the skating bowl or going down the ski jump, or choose your metaphor. These are like what we take with us as we engage, because whether it's asynchronously interacting like we'll be doing for the next 30 minutes on this Jamboard, or whether it's one of the open-ended synchronous conversations that you're about to have, these are all really important things to consider. I'll just read them and then anyone can give a thought. Active listening, be curious and open, assume kindness, play by our strengths, and over-communicate. Let's head on. And if you have a thought, please just mention it. So we are on slide 10 of the Jamboard. What is your intention this weekend? And for this part, if you're watching live, please jump into the Jamboard. The link is in the YouTube live chat, and start adding and bringing pictures in and adding post-it notes and art. Nice. People are already adding. And this is kind of like the fun when we start to see all these perspectives coming together. So somebody here, what is your intention for the weekend?
Always go first. Someone else has to go first.
Okay. Yeah, I say for me, it's going to be just continuing to experience Complexity Weekend in a different way. So I've experienced it as a participant, I've experienced it as a facilitator last weekend, and now as an organizer. And I just want to, as I see a lot of others here on the Jamboard, to have fun and to learn and keep having randomly meeting people, because I think those connections that you aren't expecting are always end up being many times very meaningful. So I'm looking forward to the complexity of Complexity Weekend.
Awesome. Shirley or Michaela or Sean?
I'm looking forward to surviving this weekend. And I'm really, really looking forward to co-facilitating with amazing people and to meeting new members of the community and exchanging ideas and maybe spark something new together.
Sean?
I think one thing that'd be fun for people who are interacting on the Jamboard and throughout the rest of the slides too would be, add your CW username or maybe a Keybase username or anything like that to your comment if you want to be kind of seen, and people will then know how to reach out to you, or if they really engage or love the comment, that's an opener to a relationship, to a new interaction. I think that's the mindset we should all kind of take on as we go into the weekend now, is that it's not just about formal structures of live sessions and office hours. It's all about relationships. So if anyone's engaging to you and you really want to engage with them more, just like directly reach out to them. Go to that people's part of the single source of truth, and if they have a Keybase username, message them, one-on-one, and just start that thread now, because it'll only get more rich and more interesting as there's more interactions and more to talk about.
Thanks, Sean. Shirley?
Well, I would echo Michaela's comment. I would also like to survive the weekend. And this is not to put a lot of anxieties at all on people. It's just that what it is it's very exciting to talk to people and get really engaged with others and ideas, especially different ideas. So I have my Fitbit. I do remember that one time, I don't know, I think it was maybe 2 years, or I don't know, one of my I don't know, maybe second complexity weekend. My heart rate was like elevated for 2 days, or maybe not that bad. But so I'm always careful to wear this Fitbit to make sure that I'm going to survive.
Daniel, that's got to be in the CW kit in the future.
Yeah, very nice. I agree. I like to stretch or just take breaks or go on walks and see that as the complexity, not taking away from the complexity. Let's look at some of these great comments. So people can cluster and add as they want. And thanks, Sean, for adding the point. You can like de-anonymize if you want, or you can just have it be just like a mark on the wall, just another stigmergy in the situation. Oh, entree. I'll need a French speaker. What does it mean?
Entrance.
Ah, I only knew it from its restaurant.
Culinary.
uses. Okay. Have fun and learn from others. Zoom around the gather space on a go-kart, play and explore. So a lot of fun happening. Mentoring teams, Sean. Support participants and other facilitators, CB. So a lot of support. Surprisal, enjoy being surprised by each and every conversation. And joy. Yes, and joy. Sparking something new and discovering new ideas. Design better tokenomics. Contribute and learn. Gather references for research and development. Prepare new phases of international communities. Very powerful. Collide with each other. Dance and bump into each other. Also fun. It could be like a gatherism, or maybe it's not. It's always fun to see with this intention question. Intention is like a complexity topic. On one hand, it's day to day, and it's embedded in whether we intend to grab a drink of water or whether we intend to show up for Complexity Weekend in a certain way. And then one can also see that term intention playing out on a technical side, like cybernetics, goal-oriented systems, bottom up and top down, and intentions coming from the top or arising from the bottom. And then not just the technical sense, but complexity in the relational sense. Like, what is the difference when two people or more show up with a given intention or with mixed intentions, and without even judging what is the best or right one? We can like hold that space with just what are intentions and how do they influence how complexity plays out. Okay, break down walls. Explore the complexity of the universe and how all things are connected. Meet new people. The entree is the fungi. It's just the beginning of the discussion around mycelium. Okay, let's go to slide 11. So here, who are you and how did you discover complexity? So you could add a little anecdote. You could add, again, your information if you want to have people contact you for a reason, or you can just provide some thought. So who here just wants to give one facet of how they came to be here. Did anyone think that they would be on a live stream talking about complexity 3 years ago? I don't know. I don't think so. I did not. But who would like to share something while others are just catching up and adding theirs on the slide?
I'll just put my favorite title, which is someone with childlike curiosity. I just feel like that's one of the best modes of existence, and it just makes life so zesty and fun.
Thank you. Shirley?
Well, I'm the one who drew the arrow and wrote the me. So I think maybe 3 years ago or 5 years ago, I really felt like that ball of thread, or I don't know, it's a loose aggregation of thread. But that was my mind. And over the years, I've pulled out threads here and there and made new kinds of, maybe some tapestry or something like that with it. So for me, that's an evolution, from this ball to some kind of tapestry with different images.
Cool. There's a lot of weaving. There's fiber arts and practices that come into play and that Yana and others have brought forward. And then there's like the complexity of just a ball of string. And cool. Common curiosity. How do people tend to find complexity? This is what we ask every time, and we kind of show up and explore that. Okay, let's read some. I'm Sabine. I discovered complexity via Michaela. I know I want to be here. My intuition knows it's brilliant, but I really have no clue what this is. So looking forward to figure it out. I just joined 5 minutes ago, so kind of lost still. Well, welcome. It's not even a joke. I feel the same way.
If you're doing it right, that lost feeling never goes away.
Yeah, there's a pattern here. Also, I joined also a couple years ago because of Michaela. So you're really bringing a lot of people, cross-pollinating a lot. That's very cool.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. Let's see what else. I think it's famous now. Is this a famous ball of yarn? I didn't know that, but we'll assign it there anyway. Tokenomics engineer at Borderless Capital discovered complexity by talking with Michael Zargum, who was a facilitator at the in-person first Complexity Weekend in 2019. And even in 2019, when others were not so hot on the trail of online organizations as complex entities and the coming tsunami of Web3 and distributed autonomous organizations, Zargum has been an incredibly important influence in developing the tools and a lot of the community techniques around complexity online. Epistemology at university was my first contact with complexity. STEM, sciences, epi on top of, epistemology, how we come to know, the science of how we come to know. Very deep and interesting area, so thanks for that. Keep bumping into complexity in many different fields. Then you need to kind of look up what complexity is. And that's like finding, I found the end. I found the end on this ball of yarn. If we just tug on this end, we should be able to unravel it, right? Then I'll know what complexity is. And one pulls and the string starts splitting and other people are weaving while you're pulling something apart and there are knots and strings of the similar and different colors. So like it's a common experience that we see complexity in an area that we're learning about. And then it's like, what did they mean by that? And then we end up going all these different directions. And complexity is about patterns across systems, among other things, including different perspectives on that. And so that is why we talk about like complexity and X, complexity and robotics, complexity and cities. It's what the facilitators show up with and help show and tell that kind of complexity intersectionality with so many other topics. So that's awesome. So people are posting some books. Complexity by Roger Lewin. Lynn, welcome, facilitator Lynn Rasmussen. 20 plus years in this sphere. The experience of the beauty of complexity expands. Great. Alhaz, welcome back. Good to see you. I'm Edwin Garcia, a 22-year-old, letting life guide me in my alchemist journey. I love learning, and so here I am. Octopus invited me here. He is part of my community. Yes. Thank you to Facilitator Octopus, and welcome, Edwin. Brad here met Daniel through Charles Blast, Carolina through June Holly, anticipating synergy. Maybe there's two strings and then they fuse. Who knows? This is just the tip of the iceberg. It feels so fun. And then it's like, this is just the trace that we're a few in the cohort are having fun with. And then we're going to dive under the water together. So this is all great. Network weaving. What is network weaving, Carolina?
Oh my, that's a question. Yeah, so network weaving is exactly what Brad is describing. That's why I landed that there. It's just finding the common threads, finding who are those people that should be meeting, should be talking to each other, and helping them make connections so that who knows what might come out of it. So it's identifying offers and needs and interests in your network, and that should be connections that should be there, and then helping make them a reality. And then people can take them from wherever they want. And then you can do it at different levels. You can actually map your entire network and see what type of structure it has, because you generally want it to have a very well connected core and then a very wide periphery with lots of connections. But that's a little bit more going into the technical details.
Oh, awesome. Perhaps Dave Snowden's Contrasting Complicated and Complex was my first aha. Have long been a systems thinker. Excellent. I know that elsewhere, I'm not going to flip to it, but we've had Dave Snowden as a keynote speaker previously and used the Cynefin framework. Ahmed will be talking about this, a facilitator for this weekend, and Nancy Mills was a facilitator coming from that area. So, yes, many different ways of learning and applying complexity. In politics. Wow. Well, great. Again, we'll just continue moving forward. If you're rewatching this, take a look through, contact some people, add your own notes, add your own marks. Let's just do one more interactive slide to kind of set our frame before we head for 30 minutes into just hanging out and gather and just connecting, getting our audio and visual working, etc. Just meeting a few other friends. How can complexity have impact in real-world systems? How have you successfully applied complexity or not? How and where would you want to apply complexity? We come together well, first, let me just address one question in the live chat from Alhaz. Alhaz, thanks for the question. Has registration for the cohort ended? If you message me on Keybase, then I can still bring someone in, but we've closed registration on the website just because at this point registration is pretty manual. And so let me know and I can accommodate it, or email complexityweekend@gmail.com and we'll handle it when we can. In general, we just encourage people who are like, oh, this is so cool, it's happening this weekend, to take a breath and get involved. There will be a heartbeat in just a few weeks. And then there'll be another weekend cohort just a few months after that. So if people are super excited, The complexity journey is long. So we just encourage people to balance their availability and not feel like they're missing out on anything. It's all good. So thanks again, though. And I hope that we can bring you on and anyone else too. So let's just read a few of these. Okay. New perspectives, transdisciplinarity. Thank you. Surprising emergence, crashing concepts together, breaking out of silos, address our wicked crises, applied in all my life and now in my research, science of communication. Cool. Creating solutions that are sustainable without unforeseen negative consequences. Here's a specific area, a previous success, modeling for security in data centers. Moving away from linear thinking, doing, and living. Expand our toolkits to address the issues we are passionate about. This is just like, it's like an infinite queue. And it's just the generativity of when we have participation. Again, even a few people who are focusing and wanting to collaborate can just open up the most amazing combinations of ideas. Creating alternatives, like I want to screenshot this and just have it to keep in mind, even when working on a really narrow topic, that like there's always alternatives, there's always new concepts that can come together. Even if it feels really unrelated, it's always somehow connected to our broader issues. Okay, to me, complexity is simple. There are so many laws and disciplines that shape the universe, but looking from above, my guess is that is simple. Yes, finding the simplicity in complexity and vice versa, really beautiful. Including non-human components. Reconceptualizing politics, business, social change processes. Allows you to connect dots across disciplines. What does anyone want to add on any of these? There's just so many here.
I like including non-human components. I think that's something I'm maybe most excited about for Complexity Weekend itself, as kind of a herald of what's to come generally. Like, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more participants in this space that are either anonymous humans, even with anonymized video components or anything like that, potentially even automated participants. You know, at some point in the future, as it becomes easier and easier to do, maybe you'll have a user running around and gathering information for a human to process after. You know, who knows? But this is kind of the exploratory space that we're in. That's a bit early to kind of what is going to be more generally happening. Yeah.
Thanks. Opening our eyes to possibilities, aligning ourselves with the world as it is, not just what we think it is or what we want. These are all amazing cues. In the next 7 minutes while we're on the stream, how do we go from these cues and slogans to the way that we are going to be showing up over the weekend, and if it moves us to form and seed a team? Sean?
Actually, if we have like 5 minutes, can we go to the slide that has the two overlapping circles? That actually might be a nice way to
sure.
Answer your question. And
yes, great. Let's go to slide 13. So, what makes Complexity Weekend an amazing space? On the left side, we have appreciations and desires. And on the right side, we have tensions and frictions. And they are non-exclusive. So, Sean, break the symmetry, please.
Yeah, I just added the kindness one. I think, that's something we can all provide for each other in this cohort. Kindness, patience. I'll update the poster with that. Those are things that, will help to resolve some of the tensions and frictions on the other side, and really allow us to feel comfortable with each other over this weekend and be open to learning and being willing to be vulnerable with each other. Those are things that I think really just crack everything open during Complexity Weekend and accelerate everyone's growth and learning.
Thank you. Carolina, Shirley, or Michaela, what's one that you'd like to add? Just to speak one or to write one?
I think curiosity is key. Just, I see this exercise of Complexity Weekend like a mass improv exercise where we're in this yes and mode instead of yes but, and accept everybody's idea and see where you can add onto it rather than confront it. And I think this kind of merges theater and life and fun and philosophy and all kinds of things, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I would add kind of in a little bit of a different take, but similar in the sense of making space. So there's, a lot that we're doing and thinking and interacting. But then it's really important to have space, which I would call emptiness. Leaving some of that openness. And perhaps that's a bit vague, but something that I'm thinking about a lot is presence and absence and emptiness and filling up. And that duality is so important.
Yeah, and I'd add maybe courage around this idea of a brave space. Keeping in mind that there will be different opinions, and that we shouldn't just be looking for validation of our own ideas, because that's something that might initially even provide some sort of trigger, might then spark an idea. And just combining courage with this kind of kindness and patience, I think, can really spark something. Something surprising.
Thanks. Let's look into the intersection, into the tensions and frictions too. So just to read a few. In the intersection, we have getting overwhelmed with ideas, the amazing technological affordances, capacities for action, for global participation, management of time and presence, remember to play, surprise, confrontation, plus and minus, and respect. And then here's some that are on the right side. It's really important to balance too. Avoiding too much jargon or gatekeeping. Tech challenges and feeling overwhelmed. Super important. Too many flows of data across all the different social networks and the wide web. Agreed. A lot of consequences in here. Time management. Balancing the mix of fun, learning, and testing, developing, growing. All these different dimensions of ourselves that get engaged. Avoid making others feel uncomfortable. And we may not even know what that is before speaking to somebody. So it's really important to show up in a way where we can communicate about what is making us feel uncomfortable or not, and just respect each other as we want to see in the community that we want to be a part of. Adjusting if you realize you are doing this. Thanks for adding this. Feeling lost. Yes, we recognize and we resonate with that. Well, that has been our opening live stream. This Jamboard is going to be used throughout the weekend. We're going to come back to it in the middle live stream. We're going to come back to it in the closing live stream as well. But for the rest of the next 18 hours or so, we're going to be in the weekend program. So next up, 30 minutes of just hanging out and gather, talking to each other, connecting for the first time for many of us. Then we're going to have Shirley, Cities and Complexity. Then we'll have a one-on-one sessions, time to connect in a little bit of a structured way. And then we're going to be right into this amazing rhythm of live sessions and flexible time. And that's going to take us up until 14 UTC, when the middle live stream is going to be, whenever that is for you. So thank you all for joining and for participating here. See you around.